It has been just over a year since Charlie Munger passed away, so I believe it's a good time to take his advice and befriend the eminent dead, in this case, Charlie himself. In this video, we'll explore the 5 most important lessons from this incredible investor. While we will only cover a fraction of what we can learn from him, we'll focus on the essence, the key lessons that can make our lives and investments a little better. Let's start with one of my favorite statements from Charlie Munger. If we simply apply the few principles he mentions here, our lives could improve significantly.
Well, it's so simple to spend less than you earn and invest shrewdly and avoid toxic people and toxic activities and try and keep learning all your life, et cetera, and do a lot of deferred gratification because you prefer life that way. And if you do all those things, you are almost certain to succeed. And if you don't, you're going to need a lot of luck. And you don't want to need a lot of luck. You want to go into a game where you're very likely to win without having any unusual luck.
I'd add one more thought, too. You need to know how people can manipulate other people, and you need to resist the temptation to do it yourself.
Oh, yes. The toxic people who are trying to fool you or lie to you, who aren't reliable in meeting their commitments. The great lesson of life is get them the hell out of your life.
Yep.
And do it fast. Do it fast.
These rules are incredibly simple. Spend less than you earn, invest wisely, avoid toxic people and activities, keep learning, and don't expect instant gratification. They are so obvious, but they serve as a blueprint for building a wealthy, interesting, and meaningful life. Of course, as we all know, following those rules can be quite hard in practice. It reminds me of Warren Buffett's quote, "Investing is simple, but not easy." We all know these principles, understand them and agree with them, but living by them is sometimes a real challenge. But all we can do is try every day to do a little bit better. Now, let's watch another clip where Charlie talks about his favorite mental model.
And there was all this folly out there, and I suddenly realized, if I just avoid all the folly, maybe I can get an advantage without having to be really good at anything. And I kept doing that all my life, and it worked so well that I enjoy sharing it with people like you. It really works to tackle much of life by inversion, where you just twist the thing around backwards and answer it that way. I have to give problems to my children, and once when I had all of them together, I said, well, there's an activity in America. There's a one-on-one tournament, and the national champion became the national champion on 2 separate occasions, 65 years apart. Name the activity. And 7 of my children could not remotely do it. The 8th is a PhD physicist, and he did it very quickly. And what he did was he just turned it around. He says, it cannot be athletic. And he realized that no 85-year-old was ever going to win an athletic thing with the neurological and other deteriorations that are so evident tonight on the stage. And so I said, well, could it be chess? He's a chess player. And he realized that no 85-year-old was ever going to be the U.S. chess champion. He knows what a chess tournament is like. But that led him to checkers, a game that you could almost master with enough experience. And of course, that was the correct answer. It took him about 15 seconds. All kinds of problems like that look so difficult. if you turn them around, they are quickly solved. And so this process that I've gone through life doing of identifying folly and trying to avoid it has worked wonderfully for me.
If we apply inversion in our lives, many things become much simpler. Achieving great things is difficult, but by focusing on avoiding stupid decisions, which is much easier, we can actually accomplish quite a lot. Charlie often spoke about inversion, making it clear that avoiding big mistakes is one of the most important lessons he tried to teach us. Warren Buffett expressed a similar idea when he said, "The first rule of investing is never lose money. The second rule is don't forget the first rule." The message is basically the same. Avoiding obvious mistakes should be our top priority. While the first two lessons were broad and can be applied to both investing and life in general, in this next video, Charlie answers a much more specific question. How should we choose companies to invest in?
We have to deal in things that we're capable of understanding. And then once we're over that filter, we have to have a business with some intrinsic characteristics that give it a durable competitive advantage. And then, of course, we would vastly prefer a management in place with a lot of integrity and talent. And finally, no matter how wonderful it is, it's not worth an infinite price. So we have to have a price that makes sense and gives a margin of safety considering the natural vicissitudes of life. That's a very simple set of ideas. And the reason that our ideas have not spread faster is they're too simple. The professional classes can't justify their existence if that's all they have to say. I mean, it's all so obvious and so simple. What would they have to do with the rest of the semester?
And here we have another set of simple rules to follow. I think Charlie's real superpower was his ability to simplify and clearly articulate concepts that initially seem very complicated. If we want to buy a company, we need to ensure it meets 4 criteria. It's within our circle of competence, it has a moat, it's run by a good management, and finally, the price is right. 4 simple things to focus on. Simple, but not easy. Defining our circle of competence can be fairly straightforward. If we are unsure whether we understand a company or not, it likely means we don't. But identifying the moat and evaluating management is more complex. And valuing a company, well, that's an art in itself. Now, let's watch a short clip from one of Charlie's lectures where he highlights 2 other essential traits to develop for a better and wealthier life.
Well, luckily, I got at a very early age the idea that the safest way to try and get what you want is to try and deserve what you want. It's such a simple idea. It's the golden rule, so to speak. You want to deliver to the world what you would buy if you were on the other end. There is no ethos, in my opinion, that is better for any lawyer or any other person to have. By and large, the people who've had this ethos win in life, and they don't win just money, just honors and emoluments. They win the respect, the deserved trust of the people they deal with. And there is huge pleasure in life to be obtained from getting deserved trust. And the way to get it is to deliver what you'd want to buy if the circumstances were reversed. And this may remind you of Confucius too, is that wisdom acquisition was a moral duty. It's not something you do just to advance in life. Wisdom acquisition is a moral duty. And there's a corollary to that proposition, which is very important. It means that you're hooked for lifetime learning. And without lifetime learning, you people are not going to do very well. You are not going to get very far in life based on what you already know. You're going to advance in life by what you're going to learn after you leave here. If you take Berkshire Hathaway, which is certainly one of the best regarded corporations in the world, and it may have the best long-term investment record in the entire history of civilization. The skill that got Berkshire through one decade would not have sufficed to get it through the next decade with the achievements made. Without Warren Buffett being a learning machine, continuous learning machine, the record would have been absolutely impossible. The same is true at lower walks of life. I constantly see people rise in life who were not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up. And boy, does that habit help, particularly when you have a long run ahead of you.
I really like the idea that the best way to achieve something is to deserve it. This mindset automatically steers us in the right direction. And focusing on becoming a lifelong learner is definitely an exciting, meaningful, and rewarding way to live. I truly love that perspective. Charlie explains its importance perfectly. The world is constantly changing, so we must adapt and keep learning. He even points to Berkshire Hathaway as an example of adapting to change and calls Warren Buffett a learning machine. This brings us to the final lesson. Charlie is no longer with us, and Warren Buffett isn't getting any younger. Questions about the future of Berkshire Hathaway are becoming more frequent. So I think the best way to end this video is to let Charlie Munger share his thoughts on the future of this extraordinary company that he built with Warren Buffett.
You and Warren are very much a double act in the chairman and vice chairman of the company. At some point, you want to probably retire, don't you? Step down, rest a bit?
Well, I don't think either of us wants to quit except as the laws of physiology force it. And that, no doubt, will be soon on us. But you got to remember that Berkshire is probably the most decentralized big corporation in the world. I think the very decentralization of Berkshire and the extreme pockets of talent in all the subsidiaries will give Berkshire a very respectable future long after we're gone. And you've got to remember that we started with a little nothing. And our successors are starting with something that is not a little nothing. And you ought to be able to achieve a lot more when you're given a mighty hand than you were when you start with a little nothing. Now, they won't be able to multiply money as fast per share because that can't happen when you're working with such large sums. But in terms of a creditable institution that serves the wider world, I think Berkshire's contribution after Warren is dead will utterly dwarf the contribution made while he was alive.